Classic Business is brought to you by MTN Business. Good evening, I'm Glenn Lewington. And the second night we discuss our topic of the week, and that's farm attacks. Some interesting stats that were revealed on the program last night. Just to share this with you, and I really think it's actually worth reading, and it's people's opinions on whether the actual attacks, farm attacks, if they should become a priority crime. Some people saying murder should be a priority crime. There's no difference in terms of the actual crime. Murder is murder. And this is a very interesting report that's worth reviewing if you've got access to the internet, and that's to look at the South African Institute of Race Relations report on farm murders. It was released in October of last year, and it just said the research and policy brief paper seeks to determine the extent to which farmers are uniquely vulnerable to armed attacks in South Africa, and it draws comparisons between the rate of attack on farmers and their families to that of other citizens in South Africa. And it's got a very interesting table, and in summary it says attacks on farmers and their families compared to other citizens, on small holdings included. It is more likely that a rural area is more likely to be attacked than an urban area. That's the basis of this. But it is, for example, just to share this, it says, according to the farm attacks, the Race Institute has amended its view on farm attacks. According to the Institute's calculations, farming families may be 13 times more likely to be attacked. But if you can go into that website, the South African Institute of Race Relations, it's worth reading that document just for a different opinion. And of course, for another opinion on this very controversial topic is Rulien Skitter. She's author of the book called Blood Sisters, and she's also co-founder of Crime Scene Cleanup. Rulien, good evening to you and welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Glenn. Thanks for having me as well.
Tell me about your book, Blood Sisters.
Well, Glenn, we were approached by LAPA in 2011.
What is LAPA?
Well, LAPA is Afrikaans book publishers in Pretoria, and they actually got Ilse Salzwedel to write the book. And we are very blessed to have the book because it's a very difficult business to advertise, if you know what I mean. So it also it's a good concept for putting it out there, so people can get the word and someone buys the book and they pass it on. So it's a good book to read if you were a victim, or if you know about someone that was a victim in one of these attacks. It just gives you the heads up about what's it all about, what do we use, and how we use it, obviously, and it just gives you a broader perspective about the whole business.
Rulien, other than being involved, as I say, in writing this book and co-founder of Crime Scene Cleanup, have you ever been the victim of an attack on a farm?
Not on a farm, no. We had little semi-attacks on farms, but it was not ourselves living on farms. It's actually when you do a farm cleanup, you can very much easily become a victim yourself. If you don't have security guards watching the place while you do the cleanup. And can I just also say that a normal cleanup, and what I mean by normal cleanup is people that die of natural causes and suicides. I mean, farm attacks are just much more brutal. It's much more traumatizing for the people or even victims that does survive these attacks, which there is a lot of. They go for counseling for years and don't get over it. So that's also a good means for us, book-wise, to let the people know that you're not the only one that's been through this, and there is other people also, and that there is help.
Rulien, why, when we talk about violence in terms of farm murders, why do we specifically say violent? Why do we speak of violence of farm murders when, if we actually look at crime in South Africa, it's generally very violent?
Farm murders is just much more easier targets because they're so far away from each other. Some farms don't have neighbors that can see or hear anything. And these farm murders, actually, some of them goes on for as much as 2-3 days, where they just keep one person alive to just answer the phones and stuff like that. It's almost like an animal-like attack, but you can't even say that because animals aren't that brutal. But it's a very sensitive subject, and it's a high priority in this country, I think. If you just look at the statistics from 2010, They said that there was an odd 70-something farm attacks, and we cleaned up 82. So just to say that the statistics are wrong, you can multiply that by about 100, and I think you'll not nearly get to the right side of that.
Really, the whole concept of having a crime scene cleanup foundation it tells you a bit about the brutality of the actual crimes that are taking place on the farms.
Yes, for sure. I mean, in other countries like the UK and America, it's been crime scene cleanup. Similar companies existed for now over 100 years or more, centuries, and we now only targeting South Africa, and I think we are one of the worst countries involved with this. I just think the biggest thing about South Africans is that they don't know that there is people like us that can clean these things, these crime scenes properly and decontaminate it properly. There's a lot of other factors also involved with this. It's not just the scene. It's the bloodborne pathogens that spread in the air and the bacteria that stays behind. If this is not properly cleaned and decontaminated, you can get 6 years after even.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's important to let professionals clean it. And if you do it yourself, I mean, you stand a chance of getting sick and even dying afterwards. People don't realize the dangers involved with this.
Reen, how did you get involved with this?
Well, we were young and we saw an opportunity in South Africa, and we just, it's almost like see a need, fill a need thing. But we're very passionate about the business, myself and my sister Eileen. I think God sent us to do this business. It was something that we weren't planning to do, that just fell in our laps to do. I think we were just very blessed of having the opportunity to do this and helping others.
Besides the fact that you've got a very difficult job to clean up something as really brutal as what we've been describing, you also have the opportunity to reach out and counsel people that are survivors and left behind. Yes,
we do. We do actually. We've got trauma counselors that work around the clock. 7 days a week. It doesn't matter when they phone. We've always got someone there to just help these people out, and it doesn't matter how long it takes. It's also free of charge. So we know the importance about the traumatic experiences that people go through. It's not just the victims, but the families as well. And people don't always think of that. But I mean, if your child gets murdered or something, you're also going to need some counselling for that. And some people are just too proud to take that opportunities that's been there for them.
What do you find is the most common scar that is left for survivors of farm attacks? When I say scar, I'm talking emotional scar.
Yeah, I think it's hatred. People, their families get attacked, and people are starting to hate one another, which is actually not what they're supposed to do. But you can't blame these people. I mean, I take for myself, a lot of my own family members have been attacked over the years, and it just leaves you angry, I think. And if everyone's angry, the problem is not going to get better. So I think it's counselling is definitely the answer for that. But I can't really say. It's all different factors and types of trauma and all that.
And I suppose, if we look at it from the perspective where people saying being angry and bearing hatred is actually giving the perpetrator victory over you, there's truth in that. There's definitely truth in that. But it's very difficult to actually practice that advice when you've actually been through something so traumatic. How do you actually get someone to buy into that, to help them heal?
Well, it takes time, Glenn. It's really up to the trauma counsellors then. I mean, we move in after it happened. We also act as trauma counsellors on the scenes with most of these people. I mean, you usually don't think something like this will happen to you, and then it does. So it's just a matter of being there for them, not be their shoulder that they can cry on while you're going to clean this, and then get the trauma counsellors to take it from there, just for them to heal a little bit. I think in the end, people do get over parts of it, but I don't think they'll ever get over the whole traumatic experience that that happened to them.
I think an issue we raised last night, and I think you'd be able to comment on that, is a lot of the people that who've survived this, they have that hatred, that anger, and if it's successfully turned around, it can become part of the solution to actually help heal the country.
It can, yes, it can definitely. Glenn, we had so many people actually that actually read the book, and the one guy was, he was told when I was back in Gauteng, he came to me and he spoke to me and he said, after gone through drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and all sorts of other abuses, when he read the book, then he kind of made peace with what happened to him, because he saw it in the light that he was not the only one, So there is other people also that's going through these things daily. And I just think that the spotlight must be a bit more on farmers, because it tends to get wiped away as attacks. And when there's a knife used, it's a panga, Farmers, they get killed with the stuff that's around the house, like garden forks and axes and stuff like that. So it's much more brutal than just your normal attack. So, like I said previously, it's different types of trauma, actually. It's like a trauma, but I think farm murder is definitely the highest level of trauma that they can go through, because it is more like, it's much more violent, and people just people don't know what to do after that. So I'd say counselling, and then basically, everybody just tries to get their life back on track.
Berlin, your website, crimescenecleanup.co.za, is that correct?
Yes, it's info@crimescenecleanup.co.za. Anyone that would like to have anything sorted out or want more info is welcome to get us on the website.
And the book Blood Sisters, information there as well?
The book Blood Sisters is in all good bookshops. If they don't have one, they will order one for you. But yes, all the info and details are on there.
Rilien Schutte, thank you very much for your time. Rilien Schutte is author of the book Blood Sisters and co-founder of Crime Scene Cleanup. This is Classic Business, brought to you by MTN Business.
With MTN Business ERP, you get a complete overview of your business operations at any given time. So your shelves can tell you when they're empty. And because it's hosted in the cloud, it's a lot more affordable to get a full resource planning system powered by SAP. Visit mtnbusiness.co.za for more info. Welcome to the new world of business.
Always feel like you're in a race to payday, just trying to make it through another week. When boom, the new fridge packs up, the old car breaks down. Wah, wah, wah. Be savvy and save for the little things.
With Nedbank Money Trader, you get a great rate of 5% per annum, plus access to your money within 24 hours, just in case. And you pay no fees or commissions. Invest today at any Nedbank. Call 0860 555 111 or go to nedbank.co.za.
Join us and make savvy investments happen. We are an authorized financial services and credit provider. Terms and conditions apply. Make things happen. Nedbank.
It's 14 minutes to 7 and you're listening to Classic Business, brought to you by MTN Business, and we continue our discussion on farm murders. In the studio with me this evening, Ernst Roots, Deputy CEO of AfriForum. Ernst, nice to have you in the studio with us. Good evening to you.
Thank you, Glenn.
Jean Kriek, Gauteng spokesperson, Freedom Front Plus. Jean, nice to have you in the studio with us. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Glenn.
And joining us on the line, Kobus Breitenbach is Chairman of the Safety and Security Committee at Agri SA. Kobus, a very good evening to you. Kobus, can you hear me on the line? No, we're not connecting with Kobus, but we will try in a moment. And just to start, Ernst and Jean, with just a general comment, and I'm just looking at comments from people that listened to the show last night, and to try and generalize what people heard last night. Firstly, I think most people agree with the absolute trauma this brings to a family. And one of the panelists was even saying, and I think that's a true thing, is in any country, if you go through this trauma, you go into almost your weakest spot in that country for comfort, for anger. And it seems in this country the easiest thing is to slip this into a racial thing, and it brings a lot of hatred into it, and it actually opens up that wound. That was something that was clearly seen last night. And another one, a lot of people saying the correct implementation of the South African Police Service's Rural Safety Plan as approved by the National Commissioner, this is from a listener who emailed us in, will go a long way towards reducing the incidence of farm murders. The Rural Safety Plan, if we look at that versus the police and what differentiates what the police do in the rural areas every day versus what the so-called rural safety plan is?
Well, I think that's exactly the question is what is the rural safety plan and what is happening every day? On paper, yes, there is such a thing as the rural safety plan, or the rural safety strategy is what they also call it, and it deals with rural safety in South Africa, and on paper it's not a bad plan. But I think there's two big concerns. The one is the fact that the plan doesn't even mention farmers or farm killings, which is a very big concern, and it's a very unique crime when you look at rural safety. So there is a particular problem, and there's not even mention made of farm killings. Other than that, on paper, it's not a bad plan, but then also the second question is what you asked, what's happening on a day-to-day basis. And if you ask people on ground level, they would tell you they have these rural safety vehicles, for example. But those vehicles are driving up and down in Brooklyn and in Johannesburg. They're not out in the rural area. So the plan is only a plan on paper. It's not being implemented.
It hasn't been but do you believe if implemented, it would go a long way to reducing crime in the rural areas?
Well, rural
or farm murders.
Yes. Well, rural areas and crime in rural areas is a problem, and that obviously includes crime in informal settlements, which are often also in rural areas. So I think this strategy would help. But there's a big problem in terms of farmers in South Africa and crime on farms in particular, where it's a unique crime, and this unique crime requires a unique counter strategy. And so the rural safety plan will help in terms of rural safety in general, but in terms of farmers in particular, I don't think it will make a big impact.
Your thoughts on that, Jean? Would you also agree that the rural safety plan is a good plan? It could work, but it's not working because, again, it's like our famed National Development Plan. Brilliant document that has not been implemented yet.
Yeah, I have no problem with the plan. It's just a shame it always stays on paper. Actually going out, some farmers actually get the chance to call before there's a farm murder. They know there's attackers, and the police would basically say, sorry, we don't have vehicles.
How different is that to the urban areas? Aren't we experiencing much of the same problems?
Yeah, it's exactly the same problem. But the fact of it is, the best system we had was a commando system. The problem we currently have is that let's put it like this: there's a airport close to the airport. There's a depot where police vehicles are being put down. Most of those police vehicles have been standing there since 2010. Now, basically, on crime statistic wise, they get crime statistics from their police station, and then they basically allocate vehicles to those stations. Most of the down to earth crimes don't get reported. So those vehicles don't get sent out at the end of the day.
Give us an example of a crime.
Like, for instance, they stole a bicycle in this street here, or whatever like that. Those crimes are petty crimes. Most people don't go and actually put down their statistics.
If I can interrupt you on that one, very briefly, just to comment, is this not part of the problem in South Africa? Is we're becoming very, very laid back about crime? What you've just said. When you say laid back, I don't mean that as in we don't care. But stealing a bicycle is still wrong. But we just think, oh, well, they're not going to do anything about it, so let's not report it, which is already conveying the wrong message.
People have become very complacent.
Complacent is the right word.
If you look at our national newspapers, etc., you will find that, another farm murder, skip it. They're not actually going to read it. I think people are looking back to the post-94 where the cat was stuck in the tree. But the fact of it is, if we do not recognize the problem and people don't start actually doing something about the problem, the problem is going to continue. You need activism. to solve the problem. And if your bicycle gets stolen, get out and put it in at the police station. At the end of the day, they use those statistics to allocate vehicles. That is if the government does their work. I mean, that is one of the excuses. So let's do it and see if there's more excuses.
Kobus Breitenbach, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm still on the line.
Thanks, Kobus. Sorry, we seem to have lost you a bit earlier. If you could hear
No,
me.
it's fine.
If I may bring you in there, we're just discussing the role of the South African police services in combating crime in the rural areas, and we're just saying that the complacency, we've reached a point of complacency in South Africa where we don't report what people just think is an arbitrary crime, and that actually starts to aggravate what we're trying to do in South Africa. It actually exacerbates. It might seem small, but it's actually aggravating the problem of crime. If you're not dealing with it even at the lowest level, how are we going to deal with it at the highest level?
Yes, no, we agree to that, because if you steal a cell phone and you are not arrested, that will contribute to a next crime, say for stealing a vehicle and so forth. So the crime circle will not be breaked if you do not have proper arrest and convictions on the petty crime. And to start off with the petty crime will contribute in combating of the whole crime situation in South Africa.
If we look at the commando systems that operated in the country, why were they abolished if they were seen as, well, it's controversial whether they were successful or not?
Yes, exactly. We believe that the commando system was for home and heart protection, and that prevented many of these farm attacks and incidents on farms and small holdings. And ever since the demolishing of the commandos or the phasing out, we are awaiting the reservist policy to be implemented for the recruitment of reservists and the rural safety strategy you referred to before. So that is the fact that Agri-SA supports the implementation of this rural safety strategy. But as previous speaker said, that the implementation, there's a lack of implementation, and that is a matter of concern, because that document covers a lot of criminal activities and preventative measures. But it is not implemented yet, and that is a concern, as well as a lack of funding. If you go to a police station and ask them where is the rural safety vehicles and equipment and manpower, it is non-existent.
Kobus, why are we sitting with a brilliant, well, let's not go maybe overboard, an adequate plan for now to address the problem? Why are we sitting with a document that nothing? Is it a budgetary thing? Is there no time in Parliament to put this through? Is there no pressure from the relevant ministry or ministries?
Well, according to our knowledge, is that it is a funding problem, budgetary constraints, that there is not sufficient funds to buy adequate vehicles and equipment, and to get sufficient manpower. If you look into the rural areas, you need some policemen to do patrols, and you even don't have sufficient vehicles for the urban areas. So what about the rural areas?
If I go back to the interview with Rulien Schutte, author of the book Blood Sisters and co-founder of Crime Scene Cleanup, she made a very interesting observation, and again, comment from all of you would be interesting on this, is the F.W. de Klerk Foundation last night, Dave Stewart, saying that murder is murder, whether it takes place on a farm or in a city. They're brutal. That's the nature of the country's crime system. I think I'm sure you'd agree, we have a very brutal society. And murder is murder. A farm murder should not then be prioritized to clean up, because murder is murder. Now, when I asked her very much the same question, her opinion on that, she said that farm murders, why she feels we should be actually looking at them, is they're far more brutal than an urban crime. Simply, and she said, quoting her, the isolation of the area gives the perpetrators more time, and the excessive violence used is farm implements are used, and as terrible as that sounds, are used in the killing of these families, which makes them more violent. So that's an interesting observation.
Yes, definitely. The Rulien Schutte has also she's also said that it shouldn't be called farm murder; it should be called farm terror or farm torture. And yes, there is that argument. And what Dave Stewart said has also been said by the minister himself, that you have a broad category of crime. You have murder, and now there's a particular category within that category that people like AfriForum, that people want to prioritize, and it doesn't make sense. But that it's not a consistent argument. If that were to be the case, it wouldn't make sense to say we are going to prioritize the theft of copper cables because it still is theft, or we're going to prioritize the poaching of rhinos, or violence against women and children, and so forth. There are other examples as well. I think the correct approach should be to say, do we have a unique crime, and does this particular crime require a unique counter strategy? And that's the core of the argument. I mean, we can debate for hours about the exact numbers of farm killings, and the numbers are very high.
Can you give us a number, because we've had conflicting figures? How many people have died over give us a period?
The problem why there's conflict of figures is because the government is refusing to release official statistics. What we do know is we have the names of verified people who have been killed that have been verified of about 1,610 in the last 20 years. Now, these cases have been verified. We know them. Well, we've heard of many cases where people would say, yes, I know of someone, my uncle was murdered, he's not on your list. And then also, if you want to estimate a figure, the Institute for Security Studies have tried to estimate a figure, looking at how many farmers are there, or were there in a particular year, and how many farmers were killed in that particular year. Looking especially at commercial farmers, they took the year 2007 because it was the last year in which official statistics were released, and the figure they came down to was 98.8 per 100,000. Now, that is twice as high as the number of police officers being killed in this country annually. It's 3 times as high as the general murder rate in South Africa, and it's 14 times as high as the world average murder rate. So obviously there is a problem, but the core argument for prioritizing this crime goes further than just the fact that farmers are being killed disproportionately. The core argument is this is a unique crime, and there should be a unique counter strategy, the same that we see with copper cable theft, with rhino poaching, and so forth. We require that unique counter strategy, but at this stage we have a situation where government is not even prepared to admit that there is a problem.
When you say it's a unique crime, based on the fact that when we look at the number, we say 1,610 over 20 years, a lot of people would rightly or wrongly argue, yes, but if you look at the amount of murders in the urban areas, it's not a huge number. So they're saying, therefore, it shouldn't be a priority. What makes it unique, in your opinion? Is it the fact that it's the realism is we tampering with what is feeding the nation, the farms? Is that what makes it unique?
Just to answer on the statistics, yes, the counter argument is, but how many people are being killed in the townships each year? And that's true, many more. But you have to compare. You have to look at you have to make a accurate calculation. You have to look at how many farmers are there and how many are being killed, as opposed to, for example, how many people live in informal settlements and how many are being killed. And if you consider that, it's a very high number. But to answer the question in terms of a unique crime, there's a lot of reasons. Frequency thereof is one.
We're going to actually, you have to leave us suspense. We have to take a short break. Classic Business brought to you by MTN Business at 7 o'clock.
At Nedbank Private Wealth, we're all about numbers. As at the end of April 2013, we'd achieved not 1 but 6 number 1 rankings for our unit trust funds. 2 funds ranked number 1 over the past 12 months, while 4 funds ranked number 1 over 9 years. Proof that the relentless pursuit of opportunity delivers exceptional performance for our investors. So, if you'd like a number to grow your numbers, call us on 0860 111 263. Make things happen. Nedbank. We're an authorized financial services and registered credit provider.
Innovation brought us here. The pioneering spirit, the pursuit of freedom, the will to shape our own future, a better future. It is in our DNA. Announcing the arrival of the all-new 2014 Jeep Grand Cherokee. With its new 8-speed transmission, air-cushioned adjustable ride heights, strong reinforced structure, and luxurious interior. The all-new 2014 Jeep Grand Cherokee for the ultimate driving experience wherever you go.
Heading up to almost 2 minutes past 7 on Classic Business, brought to you by MTN Business. And going back to that question we were just addressing before the break, and Jean and Kobus, also your comments, you're welcome. Why this is to be considered a unique crime. As you said, the figures, I'm sure everyone's going to have a different take on the figures as to the accuracies and which is more important, but why is a farm murder more unique, and why should it be separated?
Well, the figures have been, we've discussed that. Then a second one, which was also touched, is of course the fact that there's unique levels of brutality. If you read the book that Rulien Skutter wrote, Blood Sisters, they have a chapter dedicated to what they've seen in terms of farm killings. And there's stories, I've never even heard about it in the media, the most horrible stories. But I think more importantly, the fact that farmers live in unique circumstances, they live in remote areas, where the reaction of police is not what it should be, even only if it's because of the circumstances, the fact that they live in distant areas, and the reaction of neighbors isn't what it should be. So there should be a unique way in which this should be approached. And I think those are the most important reasons. We can elaborate on that even more, but that's the most important.
You're welcome to it. Jean, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the absolute brutality of it. I started about a year ago on Twitter, just actually putting names next to the people that died. It's one thing to look at the statistic, it's another thing to see, listen, 3-year-old, 7-year-old, 65-year-old. I can tell you the one family in the Free State outside Bloemfontein, a 7-year-old boy was found in the bathtub with a shower head falls down his throat. He died of drowning. Thus he was alive. The shower head was forced down when it was forced down his throat. Why do that? Nothing was taken.
Why is that done? Why the brutality? Is this people are saying it's racist? People saying it's revenge? It's got linked to the land issue, or is that just a culture we've adopted in South Africa? We've just become a very violent nation.
I think a big problem since '94 was we stopped talking. Government has stopped talking to the people on the ground. It's got its own ideas. It's not giving a damn about what's happening on the ground. On the book, the proportion? Let's play the proportions game. You've got 4 million. Let's say whites in South Africa. You've got your Afrikaans and your English. Let's say on crime statistics, let's make up a number 2%. Let's say out of 4 million, 2% is criminals. That gives you 80,000 criminals in our white community. Let's play the same average on 50 million Africans. Brings you to 1 million criminals on 2%. That is 1/4 of the minority group. So it just makes sense. You understand the whole thing about it's crime. But the fact of it is,
proportionately, then you cannot say it's a racist thing.
I can say it's a racist thing. The reason for it is, if you get a survivor now and then, you'll actually hear the stories. Stuff like kill the boer, kill the farmer, the polarization of a nation, land without expropriation.
But are we becoming, just listening to that, are we solving the problem by giving into that? Because what we seem to be doing is we actually, as colour groups, as culture groups, starting to all paint each other with the same brush. All black people are doing this, all white people are responsible. This is actually opening, and we raised this last night, if we're driving race into this, and as you said it is criminals that are committing this. Very few of those criminals would have a political or racial agenda behind it. They are unemployed people, a lot of them, poverty, they are criminals. And they are using where the country is weak at the moment in an area. Land being one of them, and they're using political and they're using economic rhetoric that they've heard around it to justify what they're doing. And they know they're not doing it for that, but it is crime. It is a crime that is committed to steal. That's it.
A crime that can't be handled by our police force. The government doesn't make it possible to handle this thing. They're not talking about it, for instance. I don't really know what to say about it. The problem is, while I was doing these lists, that's just one. The one that I told about the shower head, that's one. I had to take every three months. I had to take a month off just to get over that whole thing of, okay, I have to get back to work now, I have to do it again because my mind was playing tricks on me. It's very hard to sleep if you go through this stuff.
Absolutely. I think Rulien Skitter just talking about that with the...
But your typical farm murder ranges from, and this brutality ranges from burned with hot coals or the iron, neck broken, skull fractured or splintered, the whole body burned with pokers, finger, toenails pulled, genitals burned, kicked in. If this was normal crime, why do this stuff?
But what is normal crime?
Let's look at cash in transit. The cash in transit, that was a priority crime. But I think the statistic is even half of the farm murder farm attack statistics. As far as I've got it, it's 422 out of every 100,000, compared to your house robberies, which is 33 out of 100,000. Once again, proportionately, if you look at farms outside, it's very far apart. It shouldn't be that high. This was this was done by the Institute for Race Relations, by Frans Cronje. They are very good with their statistics. 1,500 convicted criminals on the payroll of the South African police force. Why not start there? Start getting those people out.
In other words, cleaning up the house.
Yeah.
Cobus, why the brutality? When we're listening to this, we have Rulien Skitter's book, Blood Sisters, which speaks of actual physical evidence of the brutality and the difference between between rural and urban crime. Why the brutality? And I'm going back to that issue. Can we call this racist, or is that just used as something to cover up to use as an excuse to be a criminal? I did this because.
Glenn, in some of our investigations, we couldn't find that in saying this is racism. But our investigations revealed that many of these attacks takes place on Sundays after the farmer and his family arrive on the farm from church or anywhere. So in fact what happened, that gives the activities on the farm came to a standstill on a Sunday, because the farmer and the farm workers are not at work on a Sunday. Mm-hmm. So these criminals or attackers are awaiting the farmer and his family inside the house or in a building or wherever. And that gives them ample time, as the previous speaker said, in putting a shower head into one's throat before any alarms are made. To get assistance or to call the police or neighbors because of the distance between the farms and the remoteness of the farm, that one can take its time, the criminal can take its time to take revenge on the farmer and his family in raping the farmer's wife in front of the farmer before they're getting killed. So that is the remoteness contributes to this revenge that take a lot of time to make the farmer and his family suffering before they kill them.
Revenge. When you say revenge for what?
Revenge, for instance, if you do have a labor dispute, with a farm worker. Mm-hmm. Many of the farm workers do not go to the Department of Labor in laying a complaint or reporting that incident to the Department of Labor. They retaliate on that dispute. And according to their knowledge, is that there is a misconduct towards the labourer, and that is in some cases, and in some cases as well, they are drugged. These attackers, so they act on I can't say what it. When a person is drugged, he's not aware about of his whereabouts, what he is doing.
Mm-hmm. Aaron, you wanted to comment on this?
Yes, in terms of the brutality and the political element, I think from our side also, farm murders is a very broad topic. It's an
emotive topic.
Yes, absolutely, and it's very dangerous and could even be irresponsible to try to make a generalization, to ask for example, to try to make a statement like, yes, this is racist, or no, it isn't racist, because there's a lot of elements that play into that. But the political side of it is also one of the reasons why we are concerned, why it is a unique crime, and that is the fact that it's sort of become the popular thing in politics to romanticize violence against farmers, where it's sort of the in thing. You score political points if you attack farmers somewhere on a public platform, or if you make statements such as, farmers are criminals and they should be treated as such, or there's nothing wrong with saying shoot the Boers, or they stole our land.
Do you believe that that's influenced some of the farm killings?
That is the question that's asked very often, especially when we had that whole Malema court case. If the problem with that question is to answer that, if you say yes, you have to prove it. It's very difficult to prove that a particular crime was committed, or that is the reason why it is so high, because then you have to take each case and you have to prove it. But what I can tell you is it has happened in the past. There has been at least one case that we know of where a person was convicted of murder, and he said in court that he was influenced by the Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer song. So yes, it happens, but we don't know. We can't prove how often.
To what
extent?
Yes. To what
exactly.
extent? Again, Jean, you've personally you've experienced a farm murder, or a murder in your family.
Yeah, it's my step family that on my mother's side, Koos van Rooyen. He was 62 years old. That's close to Randfontein. He was a milk farmer. Yeah, went to the court case. The guys were smiling, climbing out. The whole Freedom Front, Gauteng was there. Just trying to get them not to get bail. At the end of the day, they were so scared that they basically just stayed inside. They didn't want bail at all. But these guys were foreigners. Just to come back to
the foreigners from where?
Zimbabweans. Yeah, there were 3 Zimbabweans.
Another question I want to ask you: when you say the Freedom Front was all there to protest, again, people are going to put a brush across the group and say, well, you all white and right wing.
No, you know what? That's a common misconception people have.
You cannot, because that unfortunately is what's happening in the media. Is people are painting groups with all the same. And
well, let's not say people. Let's say the ANC. Let's say the ruling party is painting people when it doesn't suit them. I mean, it's not just the Freedom Front. They've even called AfriForum racist. We know this. The fact of it is,
do you have members of the Freedom Front that are not white?
Yes, we get 300 votes out of Soweto every year. You know what? I think it's more of an identification thing. If you identify, people do not realize it, that once you vote, most people don't realize it. If you vote for a mandate. You give a political party a certain mandate, you give it power for that mandate. The Freedom Front Plus stands for minority rights. That's not just the Afrikaner, that's the English, that's the Coloureds, that's the Khoi Kusan. The Khoi and the Kusan are at our offices a lot of times, just talking about the problems that they have in the Western Cape. It's a common misconception. You can't be in politics in this country if you are a racist party. I know the EFF is a problem now. Freedom fighters. Our constitution for the political party registrations basically say you can't have a fighter's name in your political party, because that once again is something like kill the Boer or whatever. It has an underlying message. We're going to fight now. You see. They are very strict with the namings, etc. You cannot have a racist mandate in the country in politics.
We're going to take a short break, but if I can ask you this question, which if you can just think about it during the break, do you then believe, as South Africans, we take in everything the media give us, and our opinions are formed by that? An example, and exactly what I've just said to you, is the Freedom Front will be painted by, and you're saying in this case the ANC, as a right-wing white organisation, where you've shown by demographics, in fact, it's not. It's almost 16 minutes past 7. Classic Business, brought to you by MTN Business. Join me, Glenn Lewington, Monday to Thursday at 7:30 and Fridays at 7 for a journey into the world of cinema music. Bring back the memories of the silver screen. I look forward to your company on Classic Silver Screen, only on Classic FM 102.7. almost 17 minutes past 7. Classic Business brought to you by MTN Business. Jean, that question then of the Freedom Front Plus that I just asked you before the break, if you'd like to just...
Yeah.
On that.
You know what? The fact of it is you can't be a racist organisation and be in politics. The common thing is, I don't know if there's a dirty tricks factory in some of our national newspapers or whatever like that, but it seems that you get named racist the moment that you stand up against the ruling party. When in fact, if you just go and listen, if you look at the facts of it, you'll see, listen, but this is the ruling party is being racist. Why not recognize minority rights? Jacob Zuma in Parliament said that when he was asked the question by Lindiwe Mazibuku, what about minorities and so on, he said, we rule the country because we are the majority. You have less rights because you're a minority. Now, across the world, minority rights is implemented for the minority. You know, BEE and stuff like that is implemented for the minority. We are the only country in the world that does it for a majority. And that's just a testament to the ruling parties, you know, they cannot create their own wealth. And whenever they can't do it or allocate the right money, I mean, NADA, the Youth Development Agency, spending how many millions on berets. I mean, if they took that money and they went to the farm, to the department and said, listen, we want to buy the Department of Public Works, we want to start buying farms. The government has more farms than private owners. You know, let's start using those land. But no, they'll spend it on berets. Our media is too complacent around that in the first place. I don't know. I think out of every 3 farm murders, maybe 1 will be actually in the newspaper, etc.
But no, that's exactly where I just wanted to recap. I mean, you have an interesting point, and your point is again that the ruling party, or the government for that matter, has a different take on, and also you have a different take on BEE, which I'm sure everyone in the country does. But if we look at the reality of the economics of the country didn't integrate as quickly as everyone. And somebody made an interesting point earlier, and I don't want to go in that direction, but it did answer a certain question. We unfortunately seem to stop talking once we became a democracy in 1994. And that natural integration that we all thought was happening 19 years later has not happened, and we are sitting with serious problems. And that takes us to the media issue, and Ernst, I'm going to bring you in here. Is this a fashionable, and it sounds terrible, but it's a fashionable thing to, the more brutal I'm going to put this on, it's going to sell my newspaper, but tomorrow you have a more famous celebrity that's in the dock, so yesterday's crime is forgotten. So in other words, farm murders are being sensationalized by the media, but it's just one of those issues that as they happen and the more brutal and violent they are, it pops up in the media but dropped. It's never carried through. It's giving credit to maybe the person who's broadcasting it or who's writing the piece, and we're forgetting the humanity behind it.
I think obviously, I mean, that's a topic that's been that's everyone has an opinion on that. From our side, we are a bit more aware about the other side of the coin from a media perspective. Not that I'm in the media, but we know that the media, especially the print media, is struggling to sell papers. So obviously they need to sell papers. They need to see what can they do that will make people buy the papers. And sometimes, we get people often complain the papers are full of crime. Other times there's complaints, papers are full of only, gossip news about celebrities. That's unfortunately the reality. Yes, we can complain about that, but we need to consider the reality about being in the media, which is a difficult time. I think it's a difficult time for the media. I think the bigger problem in terms of this topic is not so much the media as it is the government. Governments are not being prepared to, in the first place, even acknowledge that there is a problem, and then in the second place, also in terms of police negligence, for example. We recently hosted a conference about police negligence on farm killings, and Nantes Kelder, who's the head of our investigative unit, he literally showed up at the conference with a bunch of weapons, and it was all weapons that he gathered from farm killings scenes that were never confiscated by the police. He literally stood there and said, this knife was used to stab person X, this golf club was used to hit so-and-so on the head. they're still lying around on the crime scene. The police aren't even confiscating the evidence. So there's a huge amount of negligence in terms of policing and addressing these type of crimes. And it goes both sides. We need a proper reactive strategy. In other words, what do you do after such a crime has been committed? And there we have a problem.
So when the media report on this, as we're doing now, this is part of, I would hope, a dialogue that would open people's minds to the fact that you have a problem in the country, and it would draw people closer to finding a solution, rather than this being something that somebody's heard on the radio for a week. It becomes pointless if nothing comes of this.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we should have discussions like this, but the problem, once again, is that the people who should be coming to the table are not coming to the table.
Who should be here?
Well, the Minister of Police should be here, or his spokesperson should be here. To give you an example, we hosted a protest march in December to the Minister of Police's office, where his spokesperson called me prior to the meeting, prior to the protest, and said that they don't want this protest to take place. Eventually, it was declared an illegal gathering. Metro Police said their hands are chopped off. It's instructions coming from top management. We had to go to court for a declaratory order that we can continue with the protest and the presenting of the memorandum, but the minister just refused to even accept the memorandum.
Just to actually, if I may, on the invitations that go out for the show, Jean, I think this is your first time on the show. Answer, you've been on the show a few times. Kobus, this is your first time, I believe, on the show. But we send out literally hundreds and hundreds of invitations to put this show together for 4 hours a week. So it's actually interesting you say who should be here. We invite everyone. Everyone's given the chance to be here, but the response, and I always say that to people, you're listening to 20, 25 people over a 3-4 night period. To get that amount of people takes us probably 2-3 weeks to put together. And I'm not saying, if people say, where is the minister? It's not saying that no one is invited. It's the response is actually, it's the response we get. It's actually quite interesting, and it's saying, yes, those people should be here, but it's not that they're excluded.
Yes, no, certainly. I think
Kobus, I need to ask you a question, if I may, based on safety and security. Is a listener said that 65% of crimes in South Africa are committed by foreigners, and you talking about you were talking about a farm murder in your family where it was Zimbabwean nationals that were responsible. There has been cases where we have foreign nationals involved in crime in South Africa, but is that figure of 65%, would you agree with that?
Well, I do not have actual figures with me, but it is possible if you look into the northern provinces adjacent to the bordering countries, it might be possible that we have that high figure, especially on farms, because some farmers do employ these foreigners and without documentation. And I know I'm on thin ice now in saying that, but that is also a matter of concern that contributes to these crime situations that we experience on the farms.
What do you think, Charles, in terms of that? Is that figure, would you agree with that, 65%?
No, I don't. The fact of it is they can't even keep reliable statistics on farm murders, the government. So where did the 65% of the actual perpetrators is foreigners come from? That tells me, listen, they have an accurate list of farm murders, which they keep denying. So no, I don't believe that's an accurate statement, Len.
I just want to move on to one last topic before we close, because just looking at what is taken during a farm murder. The first, if you look at statistically, and again it's very vague, so it seems cash motivates about roughly the figure I read was just over 30% is a motivator. People will steal money. The next close on 30% is weapons. Now, this is a question I'd like to ask is, those weapons that are stolen, what happens to them? Does that get involved in other farm crime, or does it get involved in urban crimes such as hijackings? Or does it stay in rural areas? Is it exacerbating rhino poaching, for example? There must be a reason these weapons are being stolen.
Glenn, it's difficult to identify the exact reasons for that and what is the way that these weapons follow. But according to our information is that the majority of these weapons are used in rural areas for other crimes in the rural areas and for selling it, for getting money for that weapon, in selling it for very little less price than a normal price for these weapons. And so the way the weapon continues from one illegal owner next one in the rural areas.
What's your thoughts on it?
Yes, well, I think I can only add to that in terms of the statistics on the motive for the crime. That's also a very difficult topic because you would have these horrible levels of brutality, and the farmer would be tortured for hours, and then there would be, a cell phone stolen or 1,000 rand, and then the motive is said to be, theft or robbery. It's quite difficult to I mean, there are these statistics and or people estimate them, but it's difficult to make a really sound conclusion on that and to draw other conclusions from that. I don't think it's fair to say that the majority of cases are the motivation is simply robbery, because that doesn't explain the levels of brutality that we see in those crimes.
Yeah, I can't really add to that. That's exactly what Aaron said, was it? I think it was a quote that Aaron said. Aaron said, just on earlier, on the labour disputes, Aaron said, suggesting that farm murders are a result of labour disputes is to suggest that labour disputes normally lead to torture and murder, which I agree with that. The weapons are most probably used in other farm attacks, etc. Once again, if we had proper statistics around farm murders, we could know where the weapons have gone, what's happening with them. But once again, government is lacking in any kind of service. Do you think that, again, we're going back to that media issue, responsible reporting, we've got that act coming in which will either gag or do this, it'll either do this an injustice or justice, because somehow it's going to either cover this up completely or we're going to learn the true statistics. What do you think?
Are you talking about the Secrecy Bill or the Police Act?
Well, I'm talking about the Media Information Bill that's going to come through and how we report. Do you think things like this will be covered up?
Well, it's difficult at this stage to say what the effect will be or to what extent there will be an effect with this bill. Obviously, there's a big problem with that. But if it grants powers, or if they use these powers which are granted in the bill to be able to declare almost randomly to decide which information should be declared secret. Already we have a problem in terms of getting information, especially on farm killings, where there's just a blatant refusal to release statistics. So certainly this bill will not have a positive impact. If there's an impact, it will certainly be negative.
If they stop information with this bill on farm murders, that's basically the ANC, the government. That's basically government saying we are responsible. You understand? If you say, listen, we're not going to say anything around this. If they do not allow the statistics to come out and they use the secrecy bill,
but they're already not allowing the statistics.
Well, the moment they start prosecuting us, etc., then that's a big red flag going up right there. If they are taking an active role in something reactive like this, that's government saying, hey, we might have a hand in this, and they can't really afford that.
Well, that's a question, and I think we'll have to continue with that tomorrow night. I'd like to thank you all for your time and your opinion. Aaron Stroets, Deputy CEO of AfriForum, Jean Kriek, Gauteng spokesperson, Freedom Front Plus, Kobus Breitenbach, chairperson of the Safety and Security Committee at Agri SA. Thank you all for your time and just discussing farm murders. We continue tomorrow night with this discussion. Please sit back, relax now with the sounds of classic Silver Screen if you are tuning out. For me, Glenn Lewington, good night.
Classic FM 102.7